Clean copies for signature.
Yes. Live stream has started.
This conference will now be recorded.
That's your warning. Usually,
Oh,
disconnected from audio. Got it?
He's not here at all, right? Bob's the expert. Yeah, that should do it. Yeah, there we go.
Hello, can you hear it?
Nope, okay.
All right, good. Send all signatures, just pick
Yeah.
favorite one. Well, it's good to get Courtney home.
That would be a distraction.
Yeah. Don't let me forget it.
Yeah. I'm afraid if Sam was looking for a big crowd, he was up the wrong meeting.
Yeah. Usually when they're big, they're angry.
Yeah. They need a little Sam.
Need a little Sam.
All right, I have 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the December 21st DeSoto City Council meeting to order. Let's start with roll call, please.
McMurray? Hunter Michael?
Here.
Daniels?
Here.
Tripp?
Here.
All are present.
No, Lane's not.
Oh, yes, and, excuse me, Councilmember Lane is absent. Sorry,
Yes.
I mentally wrote that down.
All right. I would invite you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first item tonight is a public hearing on City Resolution 2031, petitioning the county to add Lot 1 of Astra Enterprise Park, the Panasonic site, to the territory of the Northwest Consolidated Fire District that serves DeSoto and Northwest Johnson County. Patrick?
Yes, council, we've discussed this previously. The development agreement that we have with Panasonic requires that their site be added to the fire district. The mechanism to do that is we have to notice it up for a public hearing. The statute does not indicate, what is supposed to be discussed at the public hearing. There are no, findings that need to be made. I think mostly it's just to alert a property owner, in that area, and obviously the fire district. So in this respect, obviously Panasonic is aware of this. We also, the mayor and I attended one of the fire district's meetings. They voted to support this action. This action only pertains to the Panasonic site because that's what we noticed it up for. So Resolution 2031. I put on your desk a little revision because in talking to the county, they indicated they did not need a meets and bounds description, that simply referencing Lot 1 was sufficient. So with that, I'll stand for any questions about this action.
All right, any questions for the city attorney? So then, if there are no questions, I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the council on a resolution authorizing the addition of land to Northwest Consolidated Fire District, please come to the podium. I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll move on. Our next item is a consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes from our meeting of December 7th, approval of pay ordinance number 964, approval of 2024 CMB renewal licenses, and approval of resolution 2030 declaring the boundaries of the city of DeSoto. Is there any item anyone would wish to remove for further discussion, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hunemichael,
Yes.
McMoran,
Yes.
Tripp.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Our next item is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not on tonight's agenda. The comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council during this meeting. Does anyone wish to address the council under call to public? All right, seeing none, we will go on to item 3A. Consider the city cooperating with Johnson County Sheriff's Office regarding the placement of license plate readers throughout the city.
Yes, council, we discussed this at the last meeting. Based on the discussion, I did ask David from the sheriff's office to be in attendance to answer some of the questions you had. I also gave him some indication of what the questions were that were raised. So, David, if you want to just come up to the podium.
And if you would state your name and address for the record, please, I'd appreciate it.
David Studheit, address 588 East Santa Fe in Olathe, Kansas.
Thank you. So any particular questions for Mr. Studheit?
Yeah, I raised some questions with this coming up. We got the letter in the packet that was pretty generic in terms of what it was all about. So, I think with license plate readers going up around, there's a few questions I had. One is, how are you dealing with data security? And that is, how are you protecting the data that is read? What's the policy around privacy? And how are you maintaining privacy of, individual people? And then the intended use, it was only stated that traffic surveillance or traffic monitoring was not a part of it. But since it's a Department of Justice grant, I presume that there's copious guidelines on how you're using it, what you're using it for, and what we can tell citizens about how it is going to be used in the future, because there's nothing to say that you don't change the way that that's used over time. So really, those are the three things that were on my mind. There may be others as well. Those were on my
Okay.
mind.
Do you want to take those on now?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely. So your first question, I think, was, and I think it was kind of a multifaceted question that dealt with how do we secure this information. So the way we have it now is, and we've had some license plate readers in place for a number of years at the sheriff's office in use. So there are companies out there that we don't utilize that store your data for you. We use a system it's called Genetec, and that's the same company that we use. We just migrated countywide last year to Genetec for our video management software. So we use that, and the LPR is part of that. They build the LPRs. As part of this grant money, we bought a very large storage device. It's roughly 192 terabytes. It's housed at the courthouse. It's behind the county firewall, and that's where our license plate read data goes into that storage device. It's secure. It's in the county IT network. So the storage of it is, I have no doubts whatsoever. A lot of people, and again, that's why I bring up the fact that there are companies out there that will sell you products all day long for license plate readers and different things like that, where they will store your reads for you. We are not comfortable with that at all. And if you read the fine print on some of those companies, they will sell your data. We are not selling our data. It stays with us. And we are in the process right now of developing a policy on the use of the LPRs. I will tell you this is, and we are closely mirroring Kansas City, Missouri's policy on that, which their policy is very vanilla. It states it's to be used for, it's for official business. We don't want people out there, sworn officers looking to see where their friends or family or anybody else is moving around. That's not the purpose of it. And it's not, the license plate read is not probable cause to stop a vehicle. So if you get a license plate hit, we're going to still state in the policy that it requires the officer to get in behind the vehicle, run the tag with dispatch, and make sure there is a lawful reason to stop the vehicle, i.e. a warrant, car's in as a stolen auto. The list could go on and on. The privacy aspect, I know one thing that was brought to my attention, I think as a result of the last reading, was signage. If there was an intent to do any signage around that says that those devices are in use, that was not our, we have no plans to do that. I've dealt with a lot of different jurisdictions that do license plate readers. I don't know of anybody that puts any kind of signage up that says license plate readers are being used in the area. I think it's we're using them in a public area. I akin it to, if you go to, if you go to Oak Park Mall and walk around, if you go to the Chiefs game, if you go to the Royals game, if you go to any kind of a public place, you're in CCTV, guaranteed. You're being recorded. This is kind of the same, falls under the same aspect. I remember you had three. I know
Well,
and
you kind of.
and one thing I wanted to
I'm
make
sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. These are not for traffic enforcement. And a lot of people think, they liken these to a photo radar or a red light camera. That is not, this is not the case for these whatsoever. These are mainly for us to gather intelligence. And when I say that, let's just take I live in DeSoto, okay? I'm running around town here quite a bit. If someone, if someone's a victim of a violent crime, or if we had a robbery or something like that, I sure as heck would like to have these in place to know that, hey, they're in certain areas. We know where people come in and go out of DeSoto. If we have a lot of those areas covered, then that gives these people over here a really good place to start. If you're looking for I'm looking for a red Nissan Altima that was just involved in a stabbing or shooting at McDonald's. Gives us a really good place to start looking, and we can go back to the LPRs and say, hey, in this time frame, have we had that? And we're going to, our storage standard is we're going to store our reads for 2 years, because a lot of times we don't know something happened, like we find out way down the road that something happened. And the Kansas City, Missouri, I would, if you've never had the opportunity to go look at it, I would encourage you to go do it, is go look at the Real-Time Crime Center in Kansas City, Missouri. And I think they'll tell you that most of their LPR data is used by their investigators, working cold cases or working cases that they're just not getting leads anywhere else, so they go back and start really sifting through the LPR data. But I want to make that clear that this is not for traffic enforcement. That's a whole other ballgame.
So you kind of covered my 3 questions all sort of together in some sense, but and I've seen them going up on Metcalf and, various parts of the county. So I assume all of the readers are aggregating their data in this one server system that you're talking about. Or are they all separate
Well,
jurisdictions and entities? Because I've noticed them up and down Metcalf.
yeah, so Overland Park has a series of LPRs. Leawood has LPRs. The different cities in Johnson County all have them. And they usually all feed into their own system. Now, I will say that I bought quite a bit of storage because we are planning on storing out of the COPS grant that we got money from. Money was also allocated to Mission, Overland Park, Olathe, Sheriff's Department. I know Wichita got a big batch of money. I would like to have what they got, to be honest. But, so Mission, for instance. So we partner with Mission because the county does their IT work, so it works very well for us just to go ahead and house their data for them and give them access to get that out. And everything, so like Mission, I've done some I put some up, we've already put some up and running, not in DeSoto. We're just getting ready to do, we've got some in Overland Park, but some of those we just give to, we put them up for the cities and they store, or we store them. But like some of the smaller cities, it doesn't make sense for a city like Mission to pay $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 for a storage device when I'm going to buy it and I can store everything. I can store ad nauseum and we'll never fill that thing with the amount of space we've got. So there are a lot of different agencies. I know Kansas City, Missouri is running 500 to 600 readers. I don't know how many. How many are up in Johnson County right now as far as readers. But like I say, Olathe, and we're reading about right now with what I've got now. I've got more coming online. We're reading about 150,000 tags a day.
Okay. Now, it's helpful to go through this discussion. Let me turn the use of it around a little bit. Let's say the city wanted to use that data to determine to-from information about, say, people who work in DeSoto. We want to know workforce travel patterns, that kind of thing. Could we use that data to do analysis of...
So like a traffic count?
Not traffic count, destination data. So where are people who work in DeSoto coming from? And if we knew the license plates that went through 83rd and Kill Creek, for example, where you want to put one of them, then we could start to draw some inferences about where people who work in DeSoto are traveling from and use it for, say, transit analysis.
I think that, so the problem we get into there, and I may have to defer to Mr. Reevy on this or some of the other supervisor here, is that it's K Regis information. This information was just, there was, in fact, I brought it, I'm gonna provide it to Mr. Reevy before I leave. There was a Senate bill last year, Senate Bill 434, that put this under Cora, that put license tag reader information under Cora. So I think we'd have to be somewhat cautionary in giving that out as far as giving specifics out, but I think that's something we would have to investigate further.
So in terms of privacy then, because it could be used in some way like that, there could be some question of whether some third party could demand access to it or something like that.
I think if someone were to demand access to the license plate, to the feed data, I think, again, if this is, since this goes under Cora, I think that would be heavily scrutinized as to why do they want this information? Is, because they're gonna have to they're gonna have to have a pretty darn good reason for why they want this, and because we're not just gonna divvy it out for, hey, did so-and-so's car come through this license plate reader on this night? Well,
Okay.
because I wouldn't want that personally.
Right. And that's
You know.
why I'm wanting to kind of get this out to where,
Right.
It's public
Yeah.
dialogue about what's happening. You made reference a couple of times to policy. So is the use of this an adopted policy of the county then? Is this all, you're mentioning it, but is there a written policy that defines these things that you're talking about?
It's coming. It's in the works. I've had that with our planning and research people, who now they've had it for a couple months chewing on this. I think this will be done very quickly. We will have a policy as to the use of it and some of the parameters of that, of how it's used and what it's used for.
Okay. And then last question on infrastructure. So the ones I've seen are typically on traffic signal poles. Ours are all temporary. What are you intending, particularly at Kill Creek and 83rd Street, in terms of the need for the installation of infrastructure? Is there a cabinet housing electronics equipment? Are you going to have your own poles? The locations you've proposed here, what's the proposed infrastructure?
So great question. So let's go 83rd and Kill Creek first.
Mm-hmm.
So what we would do down there now is there's a temporary cabinet down there for the traffic signal infrastructure. Normally what we do, and we have to go and seek permission for this, we've had to do it with the city of Olathe, we've had to do it with Overland Park, we had to do it in different jurisdictions. We just enter into kind of, and some of it has been really not really formal agreements. It's more kind of a gentleman's agreement, like, hey, we need to get into your cabinets and put some equipment in there. And usually no one has a big fuss with that because we're following all our IT guidelines we need to follow. So yes, sometimes we do need to put a small, we just call it a weatherproof box. It's about 12 by 12 by 12. Sometimes those go on. Sometimes we can get everything in the traffic cabinet. If people say, hey, stay out of our traffic cabinet, then a lot of times we'll just go to the all-weather box and stay out of it. Now there is, we do ask for power feed, but I will tell you this, that the amount of power we're pulling off of a couple of LPRs is probably less than a Big Mac a month. I know Big Macs have gotten expensive. Probably let's go to old Big Mac. 2 years ago Big Mac pricing. It's not expensive at all. And then we usually there's a couple ways we get that information back to our server. So one way is that we don't really prefer is cellular. We can run it across a cellular network. I've got a few in town that we're getting that, but we're getting most of those converted. I just did 2 readers on the Corliss Bridge at K10. So we're reading east and westbound K10. Well, we're not reading yet. They're not on the system yet, but they will be. Those we didn't have any data infrastructure out there. There's no fiber. There's no anything out there. Fiber's our preferred route to grab a couple splices of fiber and put them on fiber and push them in that way. So that one's going to be on cellular. And if you've seen out there on the K10 and Corliss, we're powering it with solar because there's no power out there either. But that was all permitted through, we had to go through KDOT, jump through hoops and permit, bridge permit and right-of-way permit, which I know we'll have to do here too. That's not a problem. For right-of-way permits, our vendor does it or I do them. And so that's one way of bringing them in. Not the preferred method is cellular. It's still secure. Not the preferred method. It just slows us down a little bit. The other is a fiber connection, which we like the fiber connections, and that's what we looked at here in DeSoto, is entering into an agreement with USD 232 to grab a couple strands of fiber here and there to pull this across, because I believe their fiber is a joint, like, county 232 fiber initiative. The third way is we literally point to point microwave the signals from one location to another and then get them where we can put them on a data link.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the information.
Yep.
Appreciate it. That was all the questions I had.
Okay. Rob, any? So a couple things. So right now, the policy is undefined and in process.
Correct.
Are these permanent installations or temporary installations? What's the longevity?
They can be, I mean, I know in talking to the city here and talking to the people, I know, like, specifically like 83rd and Kill Creek. We don't know what that intersection is going to look like maybe in 5 or 10 years. So those could be temporary. This equipment is all readily moved. We can move it and pull it down and take it with us if we need to go somewhere. Or we can pull it down, there's new infrastructure that comes in, and put it right back up. So they can be either way.
I will say, I don't think I've had any residents reach out and say, yay, I'm looking forward to this. Almost every single one's been skeptical of it. And I'm well aware of that. And so if I'm driving down the road in a car that is stolen or I have a felony, would the LPRs raise the flag to the county?
Potentially. So, I mean, if it depends on if they're being monitored at that point in time or not. There is the ability for a road officer to do. Kansas City, Missouri uses this in some applications in what they do as well, and other jurisdictions do too. So they can literally sit a half a block down, pull up the LPR on their mobile data terminal, and watch the cars coming by, and you'll get what we call a live hit. And they prioritize their live hits. If it's like for Kansas City, Missouri, if somebody's got a Fairway, Kansas parking ticket, they're not messing with them, obviously. If it's a Amber Alert, if it's a Silver Alert, if it's a homicide suspect, if it's a stolen auto, they're going to get excited about it. They're going to take some action on it. But you can prioritize those hits. But that's why I say the policy that's going to come into place also means that the sheer existence or just because you got a hit on a tag that's not probable cause to turn your lights on and get them on the side of the road. We still are going to require that they go through dispatch, run the tag, and see if there's that association with that tag. Because here's the God honest truth. You know, right now Kansas 3 letters or 3 numbers, 3 letters. There's other states that have 3 numbers, 3 letters. And you can get a false hit. It happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but you can certainly get a hit that's like, hey, this is 123 ABC was the tag that went through here, and that tag has a felony warrant associated to it. Well, 123 ABC also might be a tag in Alabama, and you're pulling this through different databases to get this. So that's why I say it's imperative for the officers to do their due diligence, run the tag. Hey, Kansas tag ABC 123. Yes, that is an act, and the dispatch verifies that there is an active warrant associated with that tag.
And you've got cars currently equipped with LPRs, don't you?
Yes.
Are all the cars equipped or just?
No, just a couple.
Good.
Victoria?
I think my biggest thing is I just want to see the policy like in place, like just see that fine print before
Yep.
anything is done. That's just mine.
Okay. Courtney?
Yeah, I had raised the question about, if there'd be, sign or notice of any kind, just because I'd just been driving in an area where it was, radar monitored. And of course, whenever you are, or at least in my experience, most places when you're radar monitored, there's a sign telling you, hey, this area is radar monitored. I think if not signage, I'd still like to make sure that we put out a public notice that this is being done, just for the sake of transparency, because this hasn't been, yes, people are used to being monitored on CCTV whenever you're in a public place, like at a Chiefs game, et cetera. But since this is a change of something we haven't had in place, something we will have in place, I just want to see us have that transparency with our residents.
Okay, thank you. Interesting story, and it's short. But to your point about the identified tags, I got a bill from Florida or Pennsylvania for a toll on a tag that was identical to mine, but it was on a trailer. And it was actually my work truck at the time. So they're asking me at my company, what are you doing wherever this was? Then they actually had a picture of it and showed it as the back of a trailer. But it was the same dang tag number that was on my truck, my work truck. So
I do have another question. You
Sure.
said that this comes under Cora.
Yes.
So as far as somebody requesting the open records, what's the policy? What's the policy looking like on that? Because you're defining the policy now. How's that navigated with the fact that it's under open records?
It'll probably look much like what we do we do the same thing for our video, for the entire county organization. My department runs all the video for the entire county organization, although I work for the sheriff's department. So it's the same thing. We hold all the video surveillance. So it's the same thing. You have to come in, make a request for it, and then then that goes through the attorney's process, and they yay or nay on that. So I'm assuming it's going to run much like that.
It normally there's an exception to having to produce it for investigative materials. Now, there are some things you have to show to retain it as investigation materials, but normally it's not something that would be produced.
Can I chime in, or hi? A lot of new faces here. I've been with the sheriff's office for 28 years. Captain Frank Martinez. I'm the current patrol commander. Address is 27747 West 159th Street, Gardner, or New Century, Kansas. I just wanted to add a couple of pieces to this from the operation side of things. I know Dave's given a lot of great the ins and outs of how it works, but from an operator's perspective, just so you know. We use Axon body cameras, and we also have Axon cameras inside of our cars. Axon has developed so much that by a flip of a switch, as they say on their end, our cameras can be LPRs. So the technology's there. So every place we drive in DeSoto, Spring Hill, Latha, anywhere in the county, we have the ability from our cars to read tags, and it automatically can come to our terminals. So that the technology's there, and I know people get a little nervous when they start thinking that Big Brother's watching, but there's a lot of good things that help us. And I'll give you an example. Probably about 4 years ago, we had an escaped inmate from the hospital, and it turned into a very large operation for us. We luckily were able to find that vehicle using KHP's terminal, or LPR, on the turnpike. They immediately said, hey, this is who we're looking for. We put it in the system, it hit, and KHP was able to capture that vehicle outside of Lawrence with the inmate inside the vehicle. So that's a good experience we've had with it. The other thing too is FEMA came in about 3 years ago to the intermodal to do tabletops with law enforcement, fire, hazmat, everybody else, to say, if you were to have an incident inside the intermodal, what do you have to capture data of semis, workers, everybody coming in if there is a weapon of mass destruction? We had nothing. We had no way to track who was coming in, who was leaving, other than hopefully the manifest from the businesses or the carrier logs as they're coming and checking in. With LPRs, we're starting to put them up and around the intermodal. We capture semis coming in. So if there was something, unfortunately, that was to happen in a large area like that, we have the ability to go back and say, we know what vehicles were here, we know who left. It allows us to try to track some of that. So I understand the privacy concerns. We get a lot of those questions, especially when the deputies with the LPRs, they'll do conversations, talks with the public, and that's the first thing you ask about. So, but I just wanted to share that because those are just stories that have come through my office or I've been involved with in regards to LPR.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Being that it's a federal grant, is any of the LPR information shared with the federal side?
No. It's all kept in-house.
So this is not a, I mean, we don't have to take a vote on it, it's more just, I mean, the actual application will be a right-of-way permit that will come through our normal channels, but it's just more a way to get us all informed and aware and consensus that
Yeah, I appreciate it, especially since, you know, we record these on YouTube. If, you know, a citizen has a question about it, we can refer them to the meeting and they can go watch the dialogue as well.
all right. There's nothing else?
I do think it would be fair, there was a question raised about when will the policy be put in place? Is it your position that you're gonna make application and start monitoring before there's a policy in place?
I don't think so at this point. I think our policy is gonna be coming very quickly. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. I have money budgeted right now in my grant for 83rd and Kill Creek. I know that, and I've talked with a lot of people here. I know that we have some issues. We wanted to do K10 and Lexington interchange, but I know that there is a supply chain issue on the traffic light infrastructure there. So, and I've been fighting with the same thing with Mission. Mission up at Fox Ridge and Lamar, they're putting up new traffic light infrastructure, and that took forever to get, and I think they're just getting it now, so we're gonna hang up there. But that doesn't mean that we can't buy the equipment and sit on it until the traffic light infrastructure gets here.
Okay.
I think I'd like to see the formal policy before action.
Agreed.
Well, the only action is the
It'd be the right of way.
administrative.
It'd be the right of way.
Which we don't take action on, I don't think, we don't.
Not the council. I mean, I think the only thing you could do is ask David if he would be open to
Yeah,
not applying until we get the agreement.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or we could instruct staff not to approve a right-of-way permit for it until
Such
it would
policies.
accompany a policy statement, so.
I'm just curious, Joe, what are you hearing about this in the public works circles?
Not much. I mean, we've known that, you know, a lot of agencies have license plate readers on their cars, and that's been going on for years. You know, so I mean, you're looking at a stationary location where it's at, you look at Oval Park, they've got video cameras on, you know, probably 40% of their intersections. So, I mean, it's there's not really been a big issue as far as public works that has been raised.
No, okay.
Yeah, the technology's pretty readily available. I mean, where I work, we've got the Verkada security cameras, and they can do LPR with those, even on what we've got. Not that we're using it, but it's got the capability. Do you guys have a policy for the LPRs on the vehicles? Has that policy been written, or since that's been in place for a while already?
So we don't have a policy on this because we fall back on the Kansas, it's called KCGIS. It's basically the rules and restrictions we have to follow. So whether you see it with a lens, your eyes, a reader, we have protocol that we have to follow the state mandates. Anytime you run that, it is a private search or entry. So we can't readily give that. So if I can't just drive down the parking lot and be like, oh, that's a cool, who's driving that car? I have to have a reason why I'm looking at information. So that's what we follow under, is that information we're running is like running somebody through our terminal, dispatch sending us information to our terminal. We treat it the same, and we have to follow the KCGIS guidelines. So that's why we don't have a policy that says, here's how you will use the LPR, because it's the same thing as if I'm running a driver's license. The same expectation of privacy and confidentiality is there. And as a user and a receiver of that information, I'm not allowed to share it. So that's the same way with these LPRs they fall under. And I know the policy, I'm not familiar with the policy that our research and planning group's working on, but I imagine it has to do more with the infrastructure and that per se, where that information is going to go. Any core request will go through, depending on what it is, our sheriff's records handles all of that. They'll work with Dave and handle all of those requests. So for the LPRs on the cars, we do not have a policy other than we just follow what the state guidelines are.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item 4A, consider agreement for law enforcement services with Johnson County Sheriff for 2024.
Yes, Council, transitioning from that discussion to one we have each year. The sheriff's contract, policing contract with DeSoto is a year-by-year basis, and each year during budget time, we reach out to the sheriff's office and have that conversation about what next year's contract price is going to look like. We did that for the 2024 budget. It is a bit of an increase, and that's a result of some relatively recent staffing wage adjustments that have been made in the sheriff's office, as well as a policy for complete cost recovery on the cost of services. So we had that discussion about a year ago, so we knew it was coming, and we did include it, that increase in our 2024 budget. So what you have in front of you tonight, really, it's kind of two parts to this, really. The first part is the regular policing contract that we've had in place for decades, that includes a 24/7, 365 coverage with one patrol officer in the DeSoto area, plus a shift car for 40 hours a week. The terms and conditions on that contract, it's a pretty simple contract. It's in your packet there. It's the same one as you've seen for years on end now, with a total compensation of $734,580. There is a typo in the staff report. The second paragraph there, I said 724. The contracted amount is actually $734,580. Since we're approaching the end of the year, staff recommends that the council approve that contract, authorize the mayor to sign that so it can keep uninterrupted policing service. The second part of the conversation, and probably maybe the bulk of the conversation here this evening, is this idea about additional coverage. As we know, with Panasonic development agreement, it will provide $50,000 a year starting in 2024 for additional policing services, or to compensate the city for policing services on that property. So because of that, I reached out and asked for just some estimate on what an additional shift car would be, an additional 40-hour car might be to the existing contract. In still preliminary estimate, I believe, but the estimate for that for the first year would be $221,000, and then after that it'd be about $150,000 added to the policing contract, and the difference really is because of the patrol car and equipment that would have to be purchased in the first year of that contract. So we do have representatives from the sheriff's office available. I know we had at least one question of council asking about trends in call load and call volume, and just trends over the last several years. And to start this discussion about the expansion of police services possibly for 2024. Now the police budget itself for 2024 couldn't really absorb anything like $221,000, but we could choose to allocate those resources from other areas of the budget and have that discussion. So I'd hear, Mayor, with your permission, turn it over Chip and the other representatives here to talk a little bit about the potential for increased coverage here in DeSoto.
So one thing I try to do, and I try to pull some stats, but one thing we've learned is with our stats, it's so geographic based and oriented. So unless we have a longitude and a latitude, it's hard to pull those stats in. So we worked hard with our staff, and if anything, it helped us realize that we've got a lot of different people in our agency who pull stats. So we're going to get those individuals together, and we're going to really try to hone in so we can get the most accurate stats that we can. But if you want to go to the next slide. So what I try to do is I try to pull some traffic stops. Of course, 6th District is your power shift car, which is Deputy Josie Shelton's here. She is 3 or 4 months on, maybe a little longer. Time flies. She's the new city car. And then we also have 1 district, which is the district car that encompasses the unincorporated as well as the city portion of DeSoto. That is staffed 24/7. If for some reason that district car goes out of service, we always make sure that a neighboring district comes in and covers until they can get back into service, or supervisors as well. So what I try to do is I try to pull some stats just from 21, 22, and 23 traffic stops, DeSoto citation and warnings based off the last 3 years. Now, one thing, Lieutenant Koch, who is with me as well, he's really good at pulling these stats, and he really helped me try to dig through some of this since he oversees our electronic digiticket. We noticed a decrease in traffic stops, citations over the last year and a half. So as we start looking at it, we start attributing it to traffic patterns, K10. As you know, we had a lot of accidents there. So what we try not, what I really, we as supervisors educate our staff, don't make a troublesome area worse by trying to pull over a car on a 2-lane road with hardly any shoulders. You create more accidents and you put yourself and the driver in harm's way. So that's, with that road construction going on, we also had a decrease in traffic stops because we do a lot of enforcement there as well in town. I will say the traffic patterns in town, people drive fairly, they drive safe. Just in talking to some of the staff, the positive thing too is that the crime rate in DeSoto is down 2%. And I attribute my staff's efforts to help with proactive, more than reactive enforcement. I know I work with the city. They'll send emails saying, hey, we've got traffic complaints here. We'll put officers there and we'll try to track and our enforcement efforts. So what I did is, and I know these are quick and I can email this to Mike so you guys can have it to digest it more. But we just went through and pulled some basic stats for you to look at. Any questions on those?
I can't see what's on screen
Oh.
there. Someone help me
Sorry
out with
about
that.
that. Let me try this. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that. Let's see. Gosh, I didn't. Yeah. Where's my share?
I don't know. Share.
Yeah. I don't want to share either one of those. Screen. Here we go. Which one is it? Oh, just the screen. Is that,
Now put the PowerPoint.
now I need to put the PowerPoint back up. How's that, Courtney?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank
That gets
you.
you, okay.
It was just
I'm
hard
so
'cause
sorry about that.
couldn't
I
see.
didn't even.
No worries, no
Yeah,
worries.
okay.
So I will say that we've seen an increase in traffic with the construction going on at Panasonic. I know that our staff stays busy up here. The concern, so I've been with the Sheriff's Office, like I said, 28 years, been on patrol probably for 22 of those 28 years. And starting as a patrolman 20-some years ago, it wasn't as busy as it is now. Now, when you're up here, the officer is constantly going. I know when Josie's up here, they're really busy. And we're finding that we're playing that puzzle game, moving districts or supervisors to ensure that we give you guys proper coverage up here. So I think with the growth that we're gonna see, not only with Panasonic, but the additional warehouses, that traffic pattern is gonna grow. So what I equate this to is what it looked like when Intermodal opened up. Small growth to start, construction, fairly easy to deal with. Plus, we got partners in Gardner who are also there with us as well. But as the workers start coming in, you start getting a lot of transit traffic from the cities, from all directions. With that, you get road rage incidents. I can't tell you the number of times we see people getting mad at the highway, fall on somebody at their job. Next thing you know, there's a fight or somebody brandishes some sort of weapon. Your warrants naturally pick up, your thefts, people getting off the highway, see big parking lots, they start going through, pulling handles to see what they can get into. So those resources, so your city officer, your district car, they're going to those calls, they're out of service for an hour, hour and a half, that leaves your city open. So I do think, and what we're trying to do with Josie's schedule, and we started it with Edgerton as well, we felt a need to make sure that the community sees who their city officer is. I know she's been working some days, evenings, weekends to get her here so they can communicate and have that community relationship a little bit more. I do think an additional officer down the road would only increase that imprint in the city, as well as help prevent any burglaries that may occur, just walking the beat, getting out talking to people, as well as being seen either on the highway or on 83rd Street, doing traffic enforcement and slowing people down. And on the next slide, what I did is I pulled some DUIs as well as traffic accidents and the two districts. And these are very base stats. What we can try to get you whatever detailed stats you want. I know sometimes we get questions like, hey, what's the traffic accidents like in this area? Specific areas, whether it's 83rd, K10 and Lexington, we can get all of that information. It's sometimes, depending on how detailed it is, it may take a little time.
Mike, did you want to talk about the future planning that we were talking about as well right now?
Yeah, I thought that's where we're headed, I believe, for sure.
So, Mark Lyston, I'm the Chief Deputy at the Sheriff's Office. Oh, sorry.
Actually, I'll keep sharing. Sorry if I just, yeah.
So we were in here a couple weeks ago talking to Mike about, the future contract and getting everything ready for the upcoming year. But we started talking about what we see for the future of DeSoto as the Sheriff's Office. What are the needs going to be? So as the city's growing, and I've lived in DeSoto for the last 25 years, and as Chip said, it is definitely growing and changing. So with Panasonic coming, with the number of people that are coming into the town, what is the police going to look like? And we had a conversation with Aaron and, what was his name?
I can't remember the gentleman's.
The other gentleman. You know Aaron?
Sorry.
Some strategic planning
The
for the
consultant?
city, for the consultant for the city of DeSoto?
I'm sorry, it's not ringing a bell.
I don't have my work phone with me, otherwise I'd give you her name.
Yeah, I got mine.
Taylor? Is that?
Oh.
Was it Taylor?
Sheila?
Sheila?
Nope,
Nancy?
it was Aaron.
There.
We're gonna figure it out.
Aaron does
Did we get bamboozled with another city of DeSoto?
I believe DeSoto, Texas, wasn't it?
No, because they live here, so.
Let's see, what day was that meeting yesterday?
Yesterday?
Let's see.
Oh, Aaron Wynn
Oh, yeah. No,
with,
she's with Shockey, yeah.
Okay.
with,
Shock.
She's with
Yes.
Shockey, yeah.
yes, that's who we met with, and there's a gentleman on there as well.
I can't,
They're excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. They're working on some strategic planning outreach with our partners that you guys will see in the next couple months.
that's funny, because we thought you had talked to her, and that's why she reached out to us to have this meeting.
Unrelated. Yeah.
All right, so I guess no, just kidding. But it was along the lines of everything we talked about. You know, what do we see stair stepping into the future? Do we add another car? You know, midway through the years you were talking about, maybe another car the year after. And, you know, what is down the road 5 years? Is the sheriff's office providing 24-hour coverage to the city of DeSoto itself? And what would that look like? Is that, you know, 5 deputies, a sergeant, and a lieutenant? Whatever the city wants, obviously myself and the sheriff want to make sure you guys are getting the service that you're asking for. And, you know, myself as a DeSoto taxpayer, I want the best service we could possibly have. So as we go forward, obviously, hopefully you'll be in the next one. We planned one for February or March, and make sure.
Yeah, I think that was
you're
the
there.
intent, that, you know, we agree, obviously, things are gonna change, it's already getting busier, we see the need for additional services everywhere, right? And police is one of these places. And we're working with the right people, you know, strategic plan folk, you know, the people who project these sorts of things. And from you, I'd hope to have a dialogue about what you see our needs might be in the 5-year timeframe, 10-year timeframe ultimately. That just based on your, you know, your experience.
Absolutely, and we're already planning that. So, you know, as we're doing our RARs right now, they're due the first week of January. We're already asking for additional deputies so we can start training them. Because when I talk to the Board of County Commissioners, I got to explain to them, I can't hire a deputy and put them out on the street tomorrow. It takes a year to make a deputy, going through the hiring process, going through the jail training program, then going to the state academy, and then finishing their training. And then if they go to patrol to Chip and John's position, that's another 4 months doing field training program. So I equate it to, you know, you can't hire an accountant, or you can hire an accountant and they'll be 80% within probably 2 weeks with whatever organization. If I hire a deputy tomorrow, it's 12 to 14 months before they're ready to start patrolling the streets on their own. So we're already planning over hiring and asking to increase our staff, not only for the city of DeSoto, but Spring Hill school districts looking to add SROs within the school district. They have to be patrol certified deputies. And we just know we're gonna have to add another district. Chip's been patrolling for 20 plus years, and it's been 5 districts. It hasn't changed. Call loads are picking up. We need to add additional districts just for the sheriff's office responsibility of the 40% unincorporated city of DeSoto and city of Edgerton. So we're buying police cars right now. We're getting them upfitted. Police cars are over $70,000 a piece now. So they're not cheap, and we didn't get a car for almost
2 years.
2 years. It took to get cars because they weren't making them. And then as soon as they made them, like this year, we've got 42 cars rolling in this year. It either is feast or famine. So we've got cars that we're ready to get upfitted, costs over $20,000 to upfit a car. So we're getting the guys ready and girls ready to jump into the patrol and meet the needs of the city of DeSoto and everybody else that we provide service for.
Question?
Mike, you, and I mentioned it, I think, last council meeting, that I've been asking about additional coverage, things like that. That uptick in traffic isn't down the road.
It's now.
It's, well, maybe not now, but it's in months. Because at the event with our representative, Sharice Davids, Panasonic was there, and right now they've got about 800 employees on the Panasonic site. By early spring, they're looking at, what, 3,500 on that site? Early spring to mid-year?
That would be the peak, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
in the fall, yeah.
So it's gonna be
This
going
year,
from
2024.
800 on that site to 3,500, and that increase in traffic is gonna be substantial. And then, at that point, the plant will open, and it'll probably dip some, but not a huge amount.
Well, and as more workers and more people come into the city of DeSoto, they start getting familiar with what's around DeSoto. And we just had an area of that lumber yard out there near Panasonic that hadn't had any issues for quite some time. But I think somebody knows that it's there now, tried to steal rebar, took a large amount of, I think $38,000 worth. Luckily, we were able to catch them because the second time they came back, they tried to flee and they got stuck in the mud. So we're going to see things like that start to occur. I think just because people are coming to this town, they see things, they're like, oh, I didn't know this was here, or hey, this could be something. It's a smaller town and in and out of traffic, in and out of the city.
I think we need to be planning this sooner than later.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of the start of that discussion, and as I said, certainly 2025 budget for sure, but there's, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, there's nothing to keep us from adding coverage during the year 2024.
Maybe not dedicated car like the.
Well,
at
whatever.
least more coverage.
Yeah, whatever we decide, we can work that as an addendum to the contract that we're going to put in place for the first of the year. So this was kind of to get the conversation started, really, and I think the next several months as we work through CIP issues and start the strategic planning implementation. That's when we need to have those discussions. So it was good to hear from the representatives, to get the rough estimate of costs of what one solution would be. There are thousands of other solutions, I'm sure. It'll be good to have that discussion.
If I may, I'll just add real quick. John Kocham, the admin lieutenant for patrol. I've been in patrol for about 15 years. I was the city car several years back. So as Councilmember Daniels mentioned, the increase in traffic coming back, one of the things we've noticed and our officers have commented on is our traffic on 143rd Street is immensely higher than what it used to be because a lot of people are avoiding that K-10 construction that was going on, the construction that's going on 103rd. That's going to come back. And then when you add the when you add the Panasonic plant in with the amount of commercial vehicles, our officers are going to be tied up. I run our commercial vehicle team. We're going to be up here inspecting commercial vehicles to make sure we have safe commercial vehicles running through the city. With that, our average inspection time is about an hour and a half if we do a thorough inspection on a vehicle. So we're tying up another officer doing that, which means, again, we could have a coverage where we need to have another district come up or another officer come up. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of looking at the totality of it as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess if there's anything that you want or need, reach out. It may take me a little bit. I know we just had this meeting last week and going through trying to get stats and stuff enough to kind of give you just a glimpse of what it looks like. It took a little bit of time, but I will get back to you. I can come up here, visit. Any concerns, issues with the staff or lack of visual presence of our officers, please reach out. Because I'll tell you right now, I came from community policing as well. I asked the staff to be balanced between community policing and patrol because I think it's just as important getting out, walking the city sidewalk and talking to the businesses as much as it is popping in here, and as much as it is saying, hey, slow down. Well, I got you again. Here's your citation. So,
and if we could just step back for just a second, just a moment. I don't think I mentioned it. The relationship between the sheriff's office and the city of DeSoto has been extremely beneficial to us for decades. I mean, we've had this contractual relationship. Your services rank extremely highly on our citizen satisfaction surveys. Very pleased with the work you do. I can say personally, whenever I ask for something, it's done. So from my perspective, from our staff's perspective, from our community's perspective, it's been a very good relationship. And
that's good to hear. We feel the same way. So anything you need, please reach out, email, text, whatever. So thank you.
And I'll back that up. I went through this. If you haven't gone through the Citizens Academy, it's a good thing to go through. It pretty much walks you through every section of what they do. And I did that, in 2010, and have been volunteering with their training and stuff for, 2010 to now, so 14 years. And they do a professional job for us. They are professional in how they train and how they police for us. And it's, like Mike said, it's been something that our community looks highly on at this point as far as that goes.
Okay, thank you. So the action we need now is to approve our 2024 agreement as presented, and then I guess instruct staff to continue to investigate the additional coverage, the addition of coverage through, as we move forward.
When you referenced a 2024 agreement, is there something written between the two, or is this really a matter of approving the $734,580?
No, the agreement's attached.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's a matter of approving that document.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
If we're ready, I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement for the provision of law enforcement services for the city of DeSoto, Kansas, performed by the Sheriff of Johnson County, Kansas, in the amount of $734,580.
No, I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
McMorrin.
Yes.
Tripp.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor.
You want your, you can just pull that, yeah, right out of there.
All right, item B, consider pipeline agreement with BNSF.
So yes, before you is an agreement with Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. That's required for us to, contractor to, is putting in the 5.5 mile sewer for Panasonic to our wastewater treatment plant. To get there, we have to cross underneath the railroad, and to do that, we need to execute this agreement. That's one that they typically have, and we've approved this in the past when we've had other crossings. So the fee in it, the last one to read, $6,966, which includes the application fee, an inspection fee, and then it's much easier and probably more affordable to just purchase their liability insurance on their policy than to try to match it with all their exclusions and that they ask for. So tonight we're asking that City Council approves this and authorizes the mayor to sign so that construction can proceed to install the new sanitary sewer line underneath the railroad.
All right.
And this cost is reimbursed by Panasonic from the agreement,
That's right. Yep.
so it's not residential taxpayers, it's not
Nope.
directly funded by the project, Panasonic project.
Correct.
Have you reviewed the agreement, Patrick?
I have, and I would just comment, as I did to Joe, that in the railroad, the provisions are sort of set in stone. They, despite many efforts, they will not change anything. So we are kind of stuck with it.
Onerous and non-negotiable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, any questions, further discussion? Ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the pipeline license agreement in the amount of $6,966 and authorize the mayor to execute such agreement in the form presented tonight.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tripp.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
McMorrin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, item C, consider agreement with Johnson County Cars for Lexington Avenue funding.
Yes, council, you'll remember that the agreed to funding plan for the 103rd Street improvements that KDOT's currently performing includes roughly $2 million from the CARS program. These are county funds that are allocated to the cities, largely on kind of a population-based and competitive-based system where the money is pooled with the county and then distributed to cities on an annual basis. They have a 5-year rolling program that they manage with. We've jointly allocated roughly $2 million from that program. Last year's allocation of $980,000 was done last year. This year's allocation, just over $1 million, is for 2024. So, as with All the others, previously, they do require this intergovernmental agreement to be executed between the two, designating that the county will allocate those dollars. There is a 50% match from requirement, but KDOT's expending $82 million on the project in total, so the match won't be a problem. So, ask for your approval on the CARS agreement for 2024 project.
All right, any questions?
So the match is the KDOT funds that are being used to match,
Yeah, I mean, or you could say it's our funds we've already
or
spent.
2 million that was capped.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Courtney, anything?
Nope, all good.
Okay, all right. I think we're ready for a motion then.
I'll make a motion, we move to authorize the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with Johnson County providing for CARS funding for the 2024 Lexington Avenue reconstruction project.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
McMorrin? Hanamichael?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Tripp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, item D, consider planning commission recommendation for text amendment pertaining to telecommunication towers.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a recommendation from the Planning Commission on telecommunication towers. First, a little background. A special use permit application was submitted by SBA Towers for the site out by the Waverly Water Tower on the east side of town, and that property is actually owned by the city of DeSoto. When the initial permit was in 2008 for 5 years, and then subsequent renewal for 10 years. So the time is up now for the special use permit to be reviewed again. However, digging through our code and then also looking at the table that we have that's provided on page 2 for the zoning districts, it was found that telecommunications towers are not allowed in the R1 district. And so somewhere there was a disconnect through this process. So we took this back to the Planning Commission for evaluation on what to do with special use permits in this situation. I also wanted to say that the telecommunications tower company does have a lease with the city of DeSoto. They've been paying the lease, and Patrick tells me some pretty favorable terms to the city. So it's something that's probably a good thing to have continue at this point. I also wanted to mention that the Planning Commission did bring up a tower about the fall zone around the tower, and so I put together this photograph that shows a 200-foot ring from the base of the tower, and the tower is actually 188 feet. So there aren't any single-family residences or even any structures other than the unused Waverly Water Tower that would be a potential hazard if the tower ever did come down. We'll also add that as part of the special use permit, the SBA Towers did submit a structural engineering report saying that the tower was sound and that certainly that there were no necessary improvements for its longevity. Anyway, back to the Planning Commission recommendation. We did hold a public hearing on this item, and the Planning Commission really felt that whether or not there was a special use permit, or pardon me, whether it was city owned or not, there should be a special use permit process. I did have highlighted in the yellow that there is a provision in the code that says if the tower is on city-owned property with an approved lease, the applicant or the person representing or pursuing the tower doesn't have to go through the special use permit process. However, in our code, as you can see in the table below, we don't allow towers, period, in the R1 district, which is where this tower is located. So at some point, we do need to fix the use of a telecommunications tower in the R1 district. So back to Planning Commission, we did talk through it with several meetings, held a public hearing, and the Planning Commission recommended to amend the code to allow telecommunication towers in the RA, R1 zoning districts. And the reason those districts were singled out is because they are the largest districts in DeSoto. So it's probably a more likely location that they would have a potential telecommunications tower added to those districts. And then also to remove the language that states the tower or support structure on a building on land owned by the city. Still goes through the process whether or not the city owns the property or not. Staff had initially recommended to keep that line item because it goes then directly to the council and you don't even have to mess with the special use permit process. So there's, I just wanted to throw that out, but the recommendation from the Planning Commission is to allow the special use permit process on city-owned property, basically everywhere, but in these districts. And then, of course, there's a process that we keep going through every 10 years, and Patrick and I have talked about this quite a bit, and there is some language that we could add that says maybe if we set a date in stone or picked a date, Patrick came up with a statement that says antennas or towers located on city-owned structures or city-owned land, but only authorized them to be placed there prior to January 1st, 2024, and they remain authorized in their current location, can continue. Now, if you want to follow up a little bit, Patrick.
Just, as I've reflected on this, I now, and I'm kind of flip-flopping, I guess. If you think about sort of the situation we have with the monopole, essentially it's on city-owned land, but it's pretty much a private enterprise. So, it may be good that we have the special use permit requirement, because if that use ever became not consistent with the surrounding areas, the whole theory behind the special use permit is that, based on a recommendation from the Planning Commission and ultimately the council, you could terminate that special use permit. So I know, Brad, we've had discussions earlier, it's right before the meeting, but I kind of feel like maybe it is a good recommendation by the Planning Commission that we strike this. So
alternatively, if the lease is with the city, we can't end the lease at any time. I mean, there has to be provisions within the lease. If we don't like what they're doing, wouldn't we?
No, these, like, for example, this monopole, the lease goes on for some 30 years.
But I mean, there has to be some termination clause if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, if the tower's falling in disrepair, if there's some issue, right? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, there are those provisions. This would simply be
if we don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. That was my question: is substantial cost is invested in the infrastructure, and if the city just said, well, we don't want it anymore, you can't terminate the lease. Now, the other thought I had on why would you want a special use permit is if the city sold the land, and the city has disposed of land before, and that water tower could be a potential for excess real estate that we could dispose of. Then you leave them sitting there without a special use permit. Mm-hmm. So now they're an unpermitted use in a situation where it was prior permitted through the lease. So I think a special use permit would protect the investment, the capital investment.
Well, for some reason, we did the special use permit, even though we had provisions in the zoning code that would allow us not to, right? I mean, I don't remember why we did, or if that was already in the code when we. I mean, I was either on the planning commission or the council when that tower went up.
Yeah, and it was to get the antennas off of the water tower.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
we wanted
specifically
to clean up
to get
an
them off the water tower.
eyesore. That was
right.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of, are we going to keep the water tower? That was a discussion back then.
I'm puzzled too. I went back and looked.
Why did we have that in there, or was it already there? That's why I'm just.
All I can tell you, Mayor, is I did go back, and Patrick's about to say this, is I went back to some old code books that we had, and it doesn't have the special use permit in the R1 district. back to 2003, somewhere in that area. That's the oldest one that I have in my office, so. Somehow it just, you know.
So is there still some debate of whether to strike that or not?
In my mind, like, we probably put it in there for a reason back in 2008 when the tower went up.
Well, part of the reason I would think it would go in there is if the city were willing to have a lease agreement, we're giving permission to be there via the lease document, whether it's on a water tower or a building or whatever. So would you make them jump through that extra hoop of getting a special use permit, which would be why it's not required per A4. You know, we're gonna enter into a lease, and then we're gonna make you go to planning commission to get a special use permit. It seems duplicative, but they did it at the time.
They did it, yeah.
That's what, I mean, the language that I provided to Brad would, I guess essentially, the way it was worded would, a special use permit would be required moving into the future, essentially, for new use, you know, so for example, our monopole, since it is authorized as of January 1, 2024, and it's authorized now, so there would be no special use permit process required for that infrastructure. But next year, if we had another applicant come, then that would be subject to a special use permit.
Which I think protects the applicant.
Right.
For a long-term investment.
Yeah.
I am confused. Did you write the conclusion?
No.
Or did Brad write
No, I wrote the conclusion.
I thought the conclusion was actually confused it more, because I didn't understand when you say, remove the language that states.
Yeah, that was.
Tower or support
okay.
structure on a building or land owned by the city, following the approval of the lease agreement by the city council, is not permitted. I don't understand what you're saying is not permitted.
Well, the intent of what I was trying to say is you can have a special use permit across the board in the R1, RO, and RA districts, whether the city owns the property or not. And to remove this language that talks about that they don't have to have a special use permit, to strike that sentence on page 2 of the staff report that I have highlighted. So maybe I wasn't particularly clear clear enough about the recommendation.
Brett, do you have those
Yeah.
copies I gave you? You might wanna.
Yeah, I'll hand it out.
Just that my interest.
Well, I agree that there should be a special use permit. I mean, the process should be followed no matter where the tower goes, right? I mean,
That's what I think.
so,
I
And again,
I agree.
putting yourself in the shoes of the tower owner,
Yeah.
man, you want it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I agree that the special use permit, I think, makes sense, especially when considering if something were to change in the future with where the tower is and the city wouldn't want to renew the permit, or in the case of the land being sold, we don't want to have someone then sitting with a tower unpermitted. So I think it makes sense that it always is required versus the language as it is now.
So we do need to, or are leaning towards striking that paragraph 4. I'm just confused by the way you wrote the conclusion.
Okay, well.
If that were to be a motion, I think that would muddy the water. I think it's better just to say, removing, A4 of whatever
Yeah,
section that's out.
Well, sorry to
go ahead.
interrupt. I was the one, because it seemed like both of these text amendments were kind of in flux. We'll talk about the next one. I was the one that suggested, well, let's see, does the council want to send this back to the planning commission? Do you want to just, but in any event, we have to enact this by ordinance. I did not prepare an ordinance to enact it, so my thought was just direct staff to bring back an ordinance, or obviously you could send it back to the planning commission, your prerogative. So.
Just looking for a straw vote.
Yeah, I think planning commission's done their job. I mean, my thoughts. I think they're, so I guess, I would say we would direct staff to bring back an ordinance.
Consistent with the recommendation that was made by the planning commission.
That's what I support.
Yeah.
And Mike, the Waverly Tower is gonna be replaced with another tower. Is that this year or next year?
It was slated for 24, not sure we'll make it happen, but yeah, it's under design.
So it will be a used tower again at that point? Different tower.
And Mayor, if I could, another reason why the RA is actually in the recommendations is because Daryl Zimmerman's property is zoned RA.
Right.
And there's a tower on his ground, so.
Right. Okay. Do you need any more than that?
Nope, good.
We'll let Brad continue then with item 4E, consider planning commission recommendation for text amendment
Mayor, let me stop
pertaining to.
just a second.
Trailer, boat, and RV parking. So many of those, they ran my pen out of ink. I got through, but they got a little fainter on that last one. Looks legit, though.
Looks legit.
All right. Carry on, Brad.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This text amendment is pertaining to RV, boat, and trailer parking requirements. And it's been long-standing practice that personal trailers, campers, RVs, and boats could be parked on the side of your house on compacted gravel or AB3 or some sort of aggregate that has binders in it so it can be compacted to a hard surface. Upon review of our code, and I can't exactly remember why this came up, but Cameron brought this to my attention and said, our code doesn't allow that. It says it must be on AB3 and then probably just somebody looked instead of saying and, it was or in the interpretation. So we've been telling people for years and years that they could just have compacted gravel for their boat, trailer, and RV on the side of their house as long as it met the definition of a side yard or is in the rear yard of their property. So therefore, this sends us into the path of going to the planning commission again and talking about what's the best way to codify this. So if we get a complaint, that now we can actually enforce or allow somebody who has a compacted gravel, we wouldn't have to tell them you need to now pave this area to be in compliance with the code. So we initially talked to the planning commission about allowing this practice only on the large lot tracts, and that was because the large lot tracts, which are half an acre or bigger, typically sit farther back from the road. They've got greater setbacks, and the parking of the camper or the trailer on gravel wouldn't necessarily be an issue because it's once again, it's not much of a visual impact being farther away. And the reason that we allowed or thought about allowing this on large lots is because in the smaller lots in DeSoto, most of those communities have homeowners associations, things like that, that already govern this. So we don't ever have to deal with that other than some areas within Old Town DeSoto. So then moving forward, we looked at the code a little bit more and it says properties over 2 acres must have the first 75 feet of their driveway paved, and then they can have gravel. And then if we just left it at half acre, then these homes in the half acre to acre would be okay, but the people above that would have to then use concrete or asphalt on the side of their house. It kind of doesn't make sense to say you've got to pave up to here, then you can have gravel up to your house, but then on the side of your house, you need to go back to a paved surface. So going through the process, once again, at the Planning Commission, and recommending after holding the public hearing, and there wasn't any input from the public on this item, Planning Commission determined that they'd like to have on lots more than a half acre, which the principal structure was completed after March 1st, 2024. So they want to give some people some time if they have not built their alternate hard surface for recreational boats and campers, they could just do it on compacted gravel. And their thinking was kind of wanting just the newer homes in DeSoto, regardless of the size of the lot, they wanted to have that side yard paved or that area paved. So that's kind of where we are with this process. And then after, I've got all this information about where you look up and, you can go through our city code and find all sorts of different things on camper trailer definitions, hauling, different types of information. And I've included as much as I thought was relevant to this discussion, but ultimately, really, after all this, staff's opinion really is it's just kind of go back to that standard policy that we've been telling people. It's compacted gravel on your side yard, and that's what we've been telling people for the last 20 years, and think that would be the best way to pursue this, because once again, you start splitting hairs with, large lot sizes and distances from the house, whether you've got to pave this much, and there's just always an area that somebody can complain or feel like they're being singled out. And it just felt like at this point, it was just like, let's just get back to the original thought of trying to keep the practice of compacted gravel for a boat or parking in the side or rear yard. However, we do have the recommendation from the Planning Commission that wanted to have that on half acre or larger properties that were completed before March 1st. So those people that don't have one yet can still put one in. But if your property is being built right now on a large lot, you would still have to have the paved surface.
So I brought this up, I don't know, last summer sometime with Cameron and Brad. And my thought was we just need to make our ordinance consistent with what we've been telling people to do for 20 years. I didn't intend that the council would rewrite the whole regulation and rework it. I thought the intent was just to let's have what we've been telling people match what we have in our ordinances. So
I maybe can comment on that, and that's exactly what we initially went to the Planning Commission about. It was the essentially, because I wrote the amendment, was just to say that as an alternative to pavement, you can have the compacted gravel or even an alternative surface approved by the building official. But at the Planning Commission, they were not comfortable. Essentially, they were saying, look, if you've got a new construction or new that's less than a half acre, then we're not going to allow the gravel. Isn't that right? I mean, essentially, that's what they are saying, is that for anything new, at least the principal structure, it has to be all pavement, which will then, I mean, I could see that would be a somewhat of an enforcement issue from the standpoint. I don't know if, would that mean our codes enforcement would have to know when the principal structure was built. So
I think just going back to the intent was that we just don't want these parked. First of all, we don't want them parked in the front yard. then we don't want them parked on dirt, right? So that, and I think the thing we don't define is, I mean, is the intent then that the concrete pad would have to be the same footprint as the trailer structure camper that's resting on it? Does it only need to cover a few square feet at each of the contact points? What are we trying to accomplish? And I don't know that that's even defined in the new stuff, or, you know, whether,
That's why I had tried to leave it a little bit open that the building inspector could.
or perhaps there's a new green product that is even better than gravel or concrete that allows it to still look like a lawn, but still have the support to hold the vehicle up.
Yeah,
Right.
like pavers or the pavers that have
The green
the green, yeah,
Paved
Like
grass,
they use
grass
at
paved,
Mize
sorry.
Yeah.
Elementary and,
Yeah.
yeah.
so is this on all lots then that they'd have to pave after March 1?
No, if you're.
Because the recommendation says on lots of more than a half acre on which principal structure completed before.
So essentially, what that is saying is that if you have more than a half acre, beyond March 1st, you can still have gravel, essentially, is what the planning commission was saying, is based on this. But essentially, what the negative it's saying is that if you're less than a half acre, no gravel in the future.
And I think the point that Brett made is very well. I'm sorry, Courtney, I cut you off. Go ahead.
It's okay. I'm sure the delay is making it really hard. But sorry about that. The way the recommendation is worded, like, sounds like the opposite to me, because it's on lots more than a half acre on which the principal structure was completed before March. So then it sounds to me like for more than a half acre after March 1st, they can't use gravel or other hard surfaces, which I would be concerned about because, I mean, as discussed, you know, there are plenty of homes on large lots that are not paved up to the home, and it'd be odd to ask someone to have, you know, permit a gravel driveway and then require pavement on the side yard. So, I don't know.
If I can interject, my understanding of the language in the discussion was that the way things sit now, you can't put an RV on anything but gravel or asphalt, but concrete or
That is
asphalt.
correct.
There's no provision. This carves out a specific provision, but only on lots greater than half an acre, and only if your house is already built or built before March 1st, then you may have gravel. Otherwise,
But after March 1st, even large lot would have to have paved.
yeah, right. Yeah, this only carves out existing condition kind of.
So, for example, I'm on 5 1/4 acres. I have a detached building, and next to it I put a gravel pad for the tractor. I'd have to pave that after March 1 if I built new.
No, because you were more than half an acre and your principal structure was there before.
But if I'm building new after March 1, and I have a detached building or shed and.
Well, if you're building a new house, but your principal structure is already there.
But I'm saying if I was building new, then that
If it's a
pad
new
for the
home.
tractor would have to be paved.
I don't know that the tractor counts as a boat or an RV or a trail.
And then you get into,
Accessory
or what if it's a car? Not a,
Right,
I
and,
mean,
yeah.
then you
This
get
is that
into,
same 15, 16, 18 years ago on planning commission. It was all the issue of parking trailers in front of your house.
Right.
And then we said, well, you can't park in front of your house, so you got to put them beside your house. Well, you can't just park them in the mud.
Right.
And so I mean,
or what
oh
about-
my gosh, I can't believe
what
these
about
things.
broken cars sitting on gravel next
On
to
blocks,
house?
and- yeah.
Yeah. So
But I do think in freshening this up, we need provision for a hard surface can be defined as pavers or some other green,
right.
you know, some other alternative surface that tries to accomplish what we're trying to avoid, and that is just a muddy mess by a neighbor's house.
Yeah.
Within, you know, near or within a setback.
So I think the recommendation by the planning commission would accommodate what you're saying, because the building official could approve an alternate hard surface. But if, again, we don't have an ordinance, prepared, but I guess the question is, do you want to send this back to the planning commission for further consideration, or do you want me just to bring back an ordinance consistent with the consensus here at the count? You can do that by a 2/3 majority, you can just enact it. I will say, I was at the planning commission, there was discussion of whether we even allow any trailers or RVs next to houses, and obviously I think that would be a tough, so I don't expect the planning commission would, I think they were pretty adamant at what you're looking at, that
I would
they
agree.
didn't want, moving into the future, they don't want any gravel, so. I
Well,
don't-
and then do we talk about vehicle storage as well? So, you know, bringing it then around to your example, tractor or vehicles, people parking cars on the side of their house that are not on a hard surface should not be allowed.
Well,
Is that
technically, that's already allowed, from the standpoint of, and all this got started, not to bore you too much, but we were having a problem throughout the city with people just pulling their car up and parking on grass in front of their house. So we passed an ordinance saying it is unlawful to park a vehicle on grass, and that ordinance said, because we knew at that time there were people with gravel driveways, so it would make no sense to say, so that ordinance said, no parking on the grass, you either need to park on a hard surface or gravel. And so then that morphed into, oh, it's okay to park vehicles on gravel, but that's not, so that's kind of where that came from, but I would say that, currently, right now, it simply, that ordinance says you can't park on grass, so.
What has been has there been a complaint load that has been driving this recently, or just a confusion over what the codes people are telling
It's
owners?
it's the confusion over what we've been telling people now that we.
So it's not complaints that are coming
Yeah, I
in?
don't think anybody's complaining about trailers
Hey, my
parked on
neighbor's
gravel,
parking.
right?
No, we haven't been inundated with that, but there are some places if we had to enforce this, there are some pretty obvious locations. We'd have to still go out and start writing citations for areas that are pretty easily visible from the street. And a lot of them are in Old DeSoto. There's still a lot of gravel driveways and lots that people park on. So it's one of those things.
And sort of, oh, sorry, Brad, the language that I had originally come up with that was just saying you can have an alternate, Topeka does a similar thing. Topeka, because I put out on the city attorney listserv, you know, what other people, and Topeka responded saying that they allow gravel as an alternate, hard surface, so that's kind of where the language first started. I was simply just saying that,
Yeah.
you know,
I just hate the thought of, you know, paving more than we have to pave, just for the purpose of, you know, storing a recreational vehicle or boat on it, just, I mean,
Expensive too.
the expense, yes.
so would,
I agree with this concern.
so looking at the recommendation from the planning commission, this is at the top of page 2. If we just essentially started with the sentence, an alternate hard surface for recreational vehicles, boats, campers, and trailers may be 4 inches of compacted gravel or other alternative hard surfaces approved by the city building official in lieu of concrete. Is everybody comfortable with that being made part of the code?
Well, that's what we've been doing in practice.
That is
for
correct,
20
Mayor.
Plus years without, I don't think without a lot of problem. And,
That's why I was wondering
and if you
if
wanna
it-
live in a neighborhood that doesn't allow that, the newer subdivisions have HOA regulations that provide for that, you know, but this would, I think, codify what we've been doing and consistent with kind of who we are.
So then the next question would be is, do you want me to just bring back an ordinance to implement that, or do you wanna send it back to the planning commission for further deliberation by the planning commission?
I would poll, I guess, the council, what your thoughts are. I mean, I think we are in agreement of what we think what we believe we want, so.
Yeah, I support kind of the end of the recommendation. I think the prior part is confusing. So as long as we can get it clear so that it's interpreted 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So are you saying starting at an alternate instead of in that first line, first sentence is the one that's in question?
Yeah, yeah, you know that alternative hard surfaces of gravel, well, it's really maybe 4 inches of compacted gravel or other alternate hard surfaces approved by the city building official. That way it could be paver, it could be, you know, some other firm surface that doesn't become a muddy mess.
Yeah, something other than dirt.
Something other than dirt.
All right, so we agree. So bring back some.
So I'll bring back that ordinance.
And then that'll be a 2/3 vote.
Yes, yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. All right. Consider sidewalk agreement with Freeman Concrete Construction. Item F.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So we took bids to do spot repairs for sidewalks. We received 4 bids with Freeman Concrete having the lowest bid, most responsive bid. I've worked with them in the past. They do good work. So we anticipate this starting at the first year when weather's conducive. I think the schedule is to have it all completed by March. And fairly simple. So recommendation is to approve the contract with Freeman Concrete for the sidewalk repair program.
Any questions for Joe on the Freeman bid? All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the bid from Freeman Contract in the amount of $28,023.75 and authorize the city administrator to sign the contract when submitted.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
McLaren?
Yes.
Hunter Michael?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Tripp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item G, consider a contract extension for on-call services with HDR Engineering.
Thank you. So a little history. Back in April 2022, the city approved a list of consultants for on-call. HDR is one of those 4 consultants. Their original agreement was approved back in March, which was lower down on within that agenda item. They had a task force which had a value of $50,000 to do to assist staff as needed, which was right now they're helping coordinating our utility meetings with KDOT, Panasonic, that we meet every 2 weeks on. They help us with any projects we may have as we go to the state, KDHE or other state agencies as far as permit requirements. They also help us on surveys and any other tasks that staff is in need of. So at this time, they pretty much expended the original $50,000. And so the recommendation tonight is to re-up that back up to $50,000 and continue into 2024. And I have Charlie Siebert tonight with HDR that can answer maybe specific questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions on the contract extension for HDR?
So, and this would be work that's outside of contracts that we have with them for the water treatment plant, the well field. So anything that we're already under contract with would not be a part of these services that we would be asking from them.
Okay. If I'm not hearing any questions, are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve an extension to HDR's on-call engineering agreement, task 4 in the amount of $50,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Tripp.
Yes.
McMorran. Motion carries.
All right. Item H, consider quote from Lane Christensen Company for well number 10 cleaning and repair project.
Thank you again. So back in November, we.
Joe, just 1 second, I think
Oh,
Courtney
yes,
has
yes. Courtney?
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to recuse myself from this item.
All
I
right.
believe this is the one.
This
This
is
is
the
the
ground
well
flush pump?
with the
Yeah,
pump.
this is- yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, Courtney,
Thank you.
since you're remote, if you wanna mute yourself and turn your video off, I think that suffices as a recusal there. Could she still monitor the meeting and come back when appropriate, or do I need to give her a call?
Yeah. Just as long as you don't participate in any way in the discussion, that's what our conflict
Okay.
of interest policy says. So I think it's fine if you just listen enough to know that we're going back into
Another
moving
item.
on from
Yeah,
this item.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have you noted that for the record, Brandon?
noted.
All right, so carry on.
So back in November, we went through kind of a bidding process to obtain services to rehab some of our wells. And Lane Christensen had the low bid for that. And this was in regards to well 15. Since then, well 10 has gone down. We had what we figured out was a hole in the screens. And so we had, this contract is to hire Lane to go out and rehab that well. Also, when we pulled the pump, we found out that the pump in the well was shot. So we asked for a quote from them to replace that pump. And so we've got a cost of $30,258.88 to rehab the well. And then we've got a cost of, oh, that's not it. So we've got a cost of, go down here to the cost. So it cost of $30,258 just to rehab the well, which is a little under what their proposal was early November. And then we've got a cost of $26,801 for the new pump to be installed. And so well 10, and Mike, let me go down, I think I've got it at the bottom. So we talked about a lot of work out in our well field. And so I attached some maps to kind of give you an idea of where we're talking about. So on the north side of the Kansas River, we've got 6 wells. Well 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Of those, we got well 10, well 8, and well 9 are the 3 wells that are active and producing. On the south side of the Kansas River, we had originally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well 3 and well 6 have been, our new wells have been replaced. They are now 18 and 17, and then well 4, which is 15, are 3 wells that produce water on the south side. Well 10 is one of our better producing wells. The wells on the north side tend to produce better than the wells on the south side. So well 10 is one of our better producing wells, and so it's a need that we get this replaced. Actually, I think in the memo that went out to council about this agenda item, we already have Lane working on well 10 to get it rehabbed and get it ready so that with the approval tonight, we can have the pump ordered and hopefully installed in the next 3 weeks and back in operation.
Yeah, Council, this is the email I sent you last Thursday about these repairs on the side.
And so part of and the cost of these are all associated with the well field work. That's part of the agreement that we have with Panasonic as far as upgrading the water treatment plant and upgrading the well field. So this cost is all a part of that cost that's been identified within the agreement that we have.
Okay. Questions from council?
Is this just emergency repair? Is this the emergency repair and the one that was originally due?
Yeah, so this will be the formal permanent repair of well pad. Yeah, so, but the emergency part was we need to get started. Yeah.
We're down to 3 producing wells as we work on improving our 3 other active wells.
Yeah, the 1 week made a difference.
You know, it's an example of how our economic development pursuits really are benefiting everybody and are absorbing the costs of infrastructure that we currently have. Because this well could have failed without Panasonic, we would be absorbing this, but without this. So this is one of these places where all of the city is benefiting from our economic development activity.
Okay.
So you need a motion that is consistent with that paragraph at the bottom of page 1 of the report?
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 2 quotes for Lane Christensen in the total amount of $57,059 and authorize the city administrator to sign the agreement for well field improvements.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hunamichael.
Yes.
McMoran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Okay. Courtney, come back.
There she is.
Magic.
I'm back.
All right. Item I, consider contract amendment with HDR for water plant and water tower design projects.
Thank you, though. A better night for everybody.
Joe's is the best at spending money.
Man.
So back in February of 23, city approved a contract with HDR for the design of the water treatment plant and the water tower. The total cost was a little over $3.5 million, and the cost was broken up $3.1 million for the water treatment plant and then $397,000 for the design of the water tower. Tonight's contract amendment that HDR is requesting, we have some work that they did on the design side that was out of task and changes, and their write-up, it lists those changes. And we can go through, again, Charlie Siebert with HDR is here to talk about them specifically, but we have $300,000 in change for tasks that were outside of the original contract. Originally, when they were hired, it was to look to rehab the plant. It was quickly determined that we could not rehab the existing water treatment plant. We needed to design new. So a lot of that change that's in this addendum for design was because of those changes. And during the design process, once we got to 30% design, we had some changes in how we want to do our chemical feed and the types of chemical we want to use, which required some redesign. And the reason that there was a change in that is that we looked at the chemicals that we currently use. Our water treatment plant staff is accustomed to that and how they operate and how they affect the water system. And so it was decided that we needed to make that modification so that we could continue with the treatment that we're currently doing with the water on the chlorine. The other part of this change order is for construction inspection as the plant gets underway for construction, which should start here after the first of the year. So part of the agreement is for $982,893 is for construction services that begin January and run through June of 2024. In their proposal, it kind of highlights what that total package would look like from beginning to completion of construction. What they're asking for tonight is authorization 1, and then as we proceed with construction, as we get closer to June, we'll have a better idea of timing and what's going to be involved as far as construction observation, and we'd come back at that time to amend the contract to continue their construction observation for the completion of the construction of the water treatment plant. So tonight we're asking for approval of authorization 1, an amount of $1,400,000 $84,350 to HDR's original design contract.
All right, questions from council?
Joe, you and I chatted a little bit via email about chemical feed, and I completely understand and appreciate the staff wanting to stay with what they're comfortable using with the chlorine CAS. But I just wanted to clarify that this is being designed so that as we scale up the full capacity of the water treatment plant, that we are positioned to potentially make that switch to sodium hypochlorite down the road, if that makes sense.
That is correct. So this is being designed to accommodate our current needs, and then if we decide to change down the road, then the building is set up to be able to accommodate that change.
Great, thanks.
Anything, Kevin?
No.
Rob? No. Will?
I'll make a motion, we approve the extension of HDR's contract amendment in the amount of $1,484,350.
And I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tripp,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hatamaker,
Yes.
McMorrin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item J, consider resolution 2031 petitioning county to add Panasonic site to Northwest Consolidated Fire District territory.
Yes, council, we spoke about this earlier as part of the public hearing. By your passage of this resolution, we will then simply send the resolution to the county. The county will then take action. It's really not any deliberations that they make on their end, but they will have to do it after the first year, obviously. So what my plan would be is in January, I'll bring a resolution back for the remainder of Sunflower. But tonight's action, we're just asking the county to add the Panasonic site to the district.
So if there's no question, I think we just need a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2031 in the form as presented at the meeting tonight, as opposed to the agenda packet, which strikes the phrase meets and bounds description attached as Exhibit A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
McMorrin, Hatamaker,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Tripp.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Executive session? No late additions there? No, sir. All right. We are ready for advisory reports. Mike, what do you got?
Just quickly, want to wish everybody a happy holidays season there. I will be off tomorrow and all next week, staying around, so I won't be dead, but I'll be off. So, as will I think Joe and several others here at City Hall. So as a result, we're gonna have a pretty light agenda for the first meeting in January. But remember, I think Brandon's probably gonna remind you of this anyway. Work session before that first meeting in January to talk about community center. And I think we want to slide.
Yeah, do you want to do it now?
Yeah, if we could, maybe, Brandon.
Yeah, I was gonna put it in my report, but that's fine.
Well, let's just go right into your report.
Okay.
I'm not done.
Oh,
Never mind, sorry. No, go ahead, Mike, I'll just follow you.
Okay, Brandon will have that later.
Yeah.
The other thing, I did send an email, kind of right before the meeting here to the council with the year-end financials, year-end project. We're through November, and so these year-end projections are pretty set. It's pretty much, they're not exactly, but that's where they're gonna land. And we've been tracking all throughout the fall whether or not we're gonna need budget amendments to any funds. You would have known that by now if we did, so no budget amendments are needed this year for expenditures. Yeah, really good news on sales tax collections. They continue their double-digit increases. We collected 13.8% more sales tax this year than we did last year, and which is about 26% above the budgeted amount. So sales tax goes mostly into general fund. It's about 30% of our revenues in the general fund, so that's a pretty significant revenue stream for us. It also goes into the debt service fund. It's only about 17% of the debt service fund, but so both of those funds benefited for that. The other positive news on the budget front is interest income largely from short-term investments. We received about $800,000 in interest income in 2024, and that's compared to historically what would be less than around $50,000. So those funds currently are mostly residing in the capital improvement fund. But they don't all have to stay there. We can allocate some of those, actually the majority of those, for other purposes if we desire. We'll need to have that conversation moving forward as we talk about the CIP and as we talk about increased services like police and as we talk about the world of things that will occur next year. So just wanted to share those two things with you. Very positive projections there. I wanted to thank Bonnie and the front office staff for hanging in there with us. Very challenging year for them. They're implementing new software in the middle of all this, and as we know, we've tread waters that we have never seen before regarding very large sums of money coming into the city and very large projects and a multitude of very complicated issues with development agreements. So I've been very happy and proud of how our financial people have handled it all this year. So that was it from me, Mayor. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mike? City Attorney?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Brad, City Planner?
The only thing I'd add, Mayor, is we will be having there's several text amendments in the queue, so get used to some of these discussions, because as our community's growing and being more sophisticated, some of our areas of the code are a little outdated, so.
Okay, thank you.
Stay tuned.
Joe?
Really the only item in regards to 103rd in Lexington and Astra. So Clarkston is doing a lot of paving. They've done a lot of paving around the roundabout there at Astra. And 103rd Street, they were slip forming today on Astra, pulling from the south going north. They'll be doing that tomorrow if we don't get any rain. They've completed all the subgrade treatment and rock base to be able to pave from Astra all the way up to 95th Street. So as weather permits, you should see a lot of concrete flying.
All right, thank you. Assistant City Administrator.
All right.
Brandon?
Yeah, I've alluded to this already. Mike and I on Monday met with Sheila Shockey to kind of go over the final run through of the grant application for the community center. And as we kind of sat through those conversations, we realized that an hour is probably not enough time to go over at least a preliminary grant application and kind of get your questions answered and concerns addressed. And as Mike alluded to, that first meeting in January is going to be pretty light, the agenda. So I'm recommending that we basically extend the workshop from 6 to 7:30 and then push back the city council meeting till 7:30. It should be about a wash when you think about it, but we'll also be I'll make sure we bring in dinner because I know that's tight and people getting home from work. But so the recommendation would be to start the workshop at 6 to 7:30, and then start the city council meeting at 7:30. The issue being with Coro, I need a motion from the council to make that happen. So I'd entertain a motion from a council member.
I'll make a motion that we call for a council workshop on January 4th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the grant opportunity for the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust, and start the January 4th city council meeting at 7:30 instead of 7.
I'll second that. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I
Got
said, sorry.
I got you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, all opposed, same sign. It's approved.
Got it.
Anything else?
That is it.
All right. Council comments. Courtney, I'll start with you online. Any comments for the council tonight?
Just wishing everyone happy and safe holiday season with your friends and family.
Thank you. Victoria?
Have a good holiday.
Just a couple comments. One, I talked with Mike and he's on it. One of the nice things is when I do reach out to Mike, especially on Edgerton Road type of stuff, he gets on it fairly quick. But they still don't have their mailboxes back up after the road construction. And so apparently the post office was starting to be a little bit grumpy about it. So Mike's been on that. Beyond that, just a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Kevin?
Same. Happy holidays.
Well, I think that's all I have as well. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll just declare us adjourned.
Declared adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Very good. That's great.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
You awake back there?
18.
Thought I saw you doze off.
That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty good.
You know what? I think it's great.
Most viewing.
No, I think my first year.
That's not bad.
We had a Santa Claus show.
6 was a concurrent.
Like first city council.
6 was the peak of concurrent.